Messiah. The Divine Chronicles exclusive prequel by R.J. Radcliffe. Hit him again, one of the thugs shriek as the bat connects to the side of my head for a second time. Some things never change. No matter how big or how hard men like this are, they still always move in packs. It has been the same since the dawn of time. The strong prey on the weak, and in groups. There is never just one of them. What would be the point of that? They need their friends there so that they might recount their savagery to one another at a later date. Please don't hit me again, I tell the one with the bat. Lying in the fetal position in a side alley in the rain at midnight had not been my plan for the night. But now that I'm here, I'd much just prefer them to kick me. The bat really hurts. Go on, Rick, another one of them says. Don't, Rick. You've got my wallet and phone, there's no point. You have what you came for. PIN number, another demands. To which card? I ask, as the bat comes down on my ribs and I cry out. All of them, I hear one of them say in a more desperate tone. They're taking too long. There is every chance someone might walk past at any moment and spot them beating and robbing the poor, defenseless soul. I'm neither. But I'll let that slide for now, if they leave with a couple of $1,000 in my wallet. I have no desire to harm anyone tonight, even if they choose to harm me. Another foot in the face and I feel my nose burst, the warm blood showering my cheeks. Come on, John, finish him. He's seen our faces. I look up through the blood and tears at John and shake my head. Just don't, I plead. But instead of listening, he leans over and stabs me in the chest with a screwdriver, pulling it out and sticking it in me again and again. I feel my lung collapse and gasp for breath. Closing my eyes, I wait, moving away from the searing white hot spikes of pain and suffocating lurch of my broken lungs trying to inflate. Shit, what did you do that for? Come on, we need to go before the cops show up. I hear the faint sound of hurried footsteps running away from me, and I remain still, frozen in time. My lungs burning for air, sending my mind racing back to the beginning. I should have known better. Walking the streets alone in the middle of the night wearing an expensive overcoat and shoes. There was a time that I was a petty thief like those men, and did what I needed to survive. That was a long time ago, though. The world is a different place now. In a moment, everything will be all right. Any moment. Victor, come on now. If Nessie sees the state of your clothes when you get in, she's going to go ballistic. The tightness beneath my ribcage begins to subside as my lungs repair themselves, and I take in a massive gulp of air, coughing as I exhale. Groaning, I roll over onto my knees and stretch, feeling the broken bones readjusting until I'm on my feet facing the way my assailants fled. I could run after them. I'm pretty fast. I'm sure I'd be able to hunt them down. But what would be the point? A couple of $1,000 is worth the price of them not realizing my fatal wounds were not so fatal at all. Looking down at the blood-stained rags which have become my shirt, I sigh. I should never have gotten into an altercation with them to begin with. I should have run. I wouldn't fight them in case I hurt them. That would have drawn attention someone like me doesn't need. Fight or flight. I did neither. Instead, I allowed myself to become the victim of a fatal beating and then stabbing. Fatal for anyone other than me. My kind, that is. There have been many stories told of people like me. Down the years, some have thought us angels, and equally others have branded us devils. We have been worshipped with fascination and awe, and then hunted through incomprehension and fear. In truth, we are neither angels nor devils. We were once men, back at the beginning, back when life made sense, a simpler time. Since the dawn of mankind, we have been survivors. A species who were able to shape their own destiny, no matter how humble or grandiose that destiny would become. The key difference between us and every other animal that roamed the planet was our self-awareness. I think, therefore I am. No more powerful words have ever been uttered. Man's brilliance in understanding they existed is what started it all off for them, really. It caused them to question everything, push themselves forward towards the next horizon both figuratively and literally. No other species, in the history of our Earth, has managed to shape their home to their will like man has. Early man's life was all about feeding themselves and their community, their families, having somewhere warm and dry to shelter from the elements, and, of course, to procreate. They worshipped the land, the sun, the rain, everything which was provided for them. And still they asked questions. Still they fought towards the next horizon. This couldn't be it, could it? What was the point in any of it? What was the point in being thrown into existence? There must be some grand plan, and if so, there must be something behind that plan. Over thousands of years, religion and gods evolved with the people who followed them. Stories were created, and with them myths and legends formed down the years. There was one particular story which really caught people's imagination around 2 millennia ago, that of a Jewish preacher called Yeshua performing miracles. Like everything, the stories of this man have evolved down the ages, and even my name was changed in 1629 after many other iterations. The first major revision of the King James Bible added the letter J into its texts. Before then, the letter I had been sufficient. This was when Jesus was born. The man, not the God. Well, I was born, somewhat ironically given the acronym, between 6 and 4 BC if historians are to be believed. Also, somewhat ironically, by the time Jesus had been crowned the Son of God, I had not kept faith with any sort of deity for many centuries. Believing there is something more is a notion created by man because of their reluctance to accept that once their short time on the planet is finished, there is no more. The miracle was coming into existence in the first place. Life is chaos, a crashing around of atoms to produce consciousness and a shell in which that consciousness will exist until it withers and returns to oblivion. From the moment of conception, our cells are on a one-way track towards the status quo. But there must be something after death? This can't be it, can it? There was nothing for billions of years before we were born. What makes man believe they are so special that there would be some other place after taking their last breath? And if there was, what would the criteria for inclusion be? Do trees move onto paradise when we chop them down to make room for cattle to graze on? Do the fish we take from the sea find their own heaven after suffocation? Man is no more special than any other living component on Earth. Our only difference is self-awareness, and because of that state of mind, fear of the unknown. I was once a man, before Roman soldiers crucified me for a claim I now find almost laughable. King of the Jews. I was born of Jewish parentage, brought up to practice Judaism, and from an early age found I had the ability to manipulate the elements around me. My miracles were something else. Born from my ability to manipulate the forces of nature surrounding me. Had I been born in another time, I might have been the main attraction at a carnival or a headlining Las Vegas magician, but no. I was conceived in a much simpler moment, when man's awe and savagery weighed in equal measures. Turning water into wine, healing the sick, and of course my piece de resistance, walking on water, were tricks I used to inspire awe which would lead the people who witnessed these feats to listen to my message of love and compassion. That message spread and was celebrated until it fell on the wrong ears, and I was deemed blasphemous. My crucifixion is a story everyone knows. The symbol of Christ is the symbol of that cross, after all. What a way to be remembered, having people worshipping you by using your instrument of death as a focal point. Although it isn't me they worship. It is the idea of me. The idea that I died for man's sins, denouncing the flesh to be alive in the spirit. It is that idea which spread the globe. The idea of religion as a whole is a false prophecy, and this is coming from that guy who sacrificed himself for the people and woke up trapped inside Joseph of Arimathea's tomb, my wounds healed. That was the moment I ceased being man and became something else. Life is indeed full of these little ironies, and there was a book written by another like me who coined our kind divine. We are not. We are something else. The next step in evolution, perhaps, for can I call myself divine when I am godless? If you stab me, my body will heal, shoot me, my body will heal, crucify me. I look down at my left wrist and the scar left behind from those first spikes. I have a matching one on the other wrist. They are a constant reminder that I was once man before I became something else. Immortal. Homo sapien 2.0. Stepping from the alley onto the street, I check the road for any cabs as I set off on foot towards the city center and my offices. With no wallet and no phone, if a cab doesn't drive by, it'll be a good 30-minute walk into the center. I curse the air as I walk. I'd been down this way to meet up with someone who claimed to be one of us, immortal. I had been instructed to wait on the corner of LeBranch Street and Headley Street, across the road from the wheel repair place, at 11:30 p.m., but had arrived a little early. My loitering had alerted a group of guys across the road, and the rest, it seems, is history. Why hadn't she shown up? Or had she arrived after I'd been forced into the alley? I knew I shouldn't have come alone, but my enthusiasm to meet this particular lady, who claimed to have come over to the Americas on the Mayflower, caused me to throw caution to the wind. There have been many muggings and beatings down the years. Stick around long enough and the law of averages catches up with you. Even though I do not die and my body heals, it still hurts. I feel pain like anyone else would. Fortunately, the pain soon dissipates. I pick up my pace. Tomorrow I have another 2 meetings. The first one is a run-of-the-mill evaluation. A Mexican man named Mateo claims he was around for the birth of his country, which would mean he is at least 200 years old. I'm only there to observe, a friendly face, if you will, as it was me who found him. Then afterwards I've a meeting with another man who is much older, and this one could very well change everything for those deemed divine. His name is William Johnson, and we first met back in the 1700s. Even back then I was searching for others, and I had happened across this man who ticked all the boxes of being immortal. He was well-versed in history, spoke many languages, well-traveled, and had that air of assurance about him. Unfortunately, that particular meeting didn't end as well as it might have, through no fault of William's, might I add. Now, though, many, many years later, and he will be arriving to Houston in the morning. It is exciting times, for I believe with William in the fold we could reach so many more people like us, to who the sands of time do not touch. It's a scary world out there. They are alone, afraid, alienated from their friends and family perhaps. The last thing anyone wants is for them to go public, though. The world isn't ready for that. They would be whisked away to who knows where and experimented upon. I know from extensive experience, man will always experiment, prod and poke, slice and dice. Much rather at us, the Phoenix Committee, their own brethren, who help them. In the middle distance I can see the top of our building, and so I quicken my pace. Officially, the Phoenix Committee is a humanitarian organization, a lot like Oxfam, UNICEF, and the Red Cross. Throughout my time walking this earth, I have always fought for those in need, and having been around long enough to amass a wealth matched by very few, I am able through my company to help on a grand scale. Unofficially, we scour the globe for other men and women who are immortal. There are some who do not want to be found, and others who are glad knowing they are not alone. We also have a medical research and science division, which would rival any university in the world. Our ultimate goal is that ultimate why. Why are we biologically immortal? Why do our bodies heal at such a rate that 5 lunges of a dull screwdriver into my chest, not 20 minutes ago, is all but a fading memory now? Did we evolve from man, or were we always something completely different? It isn't just the immortality. As I mentioned, in my first life I performed miracles like walking on water. How was I able to control such elements so that I did not fall through the surface and into the water's depths? We are an inquisitive species, or perhaps subspecies of man, always heading for that next horizon. I reached the main entrance of the building and waved to the security on reception, tightening my coat around my bloody shirt. He's a civilian. I don't need to alarm him for no good reason. "Mr. Morris, sir. Is everything all right?" he asks, unlocking the full-length glass door and ushering me inside. We have had 24-hour security at the building for a number of years now, ever since Charlie, a 10-year-old street kid, was found by police walking the streets claiming he'd been murdered by his folks and didn't know where else to go. One of our contacts at the police department called us, and mountains were moved to get him to us, where he would be safe. The poor boy. 10 years old for eternity. He lives in the building on the 34th floor, and he and Nessie have a beautiful relationship. She never had children of her own, and she spends a lot of time with him. Once Charlie moved in with his carers, we needed the building to have security. I'd never feel comfortable locking the place up until the next day. Now there is always a team there, which is a good thing really, because we now have 8 full-time residents who live on the upper floors. Some are forever children, others are just passing through. All of our brothers and sisters are welcome and are able to stay for as long as they need. Everything's fine, I say, checking the guard's name tag and adding, Clive. I stupidly left my wallet and phone in a bar, and when I realized and returned to the establishment, they had closed for the night. I'll ring them in the morning. If you don't mind, could I borrow your card? I've everything I need in my office, but I can't get past the elevators. No keycard. I've a spare in my desk. Clive lets out a great big ball of laughter, and I smile. Of course, Mr. Morris. The elevators. He escorts me to the far side of the foyer and grins when I nod as the doors close on me, whisking me up to the Phoenix Committee's floors. Different departments take up their space in the building, but the official office is right at the top and spans the 80th to the 85th floor. My office is on the 80th. I step out onto 80 and walk through into our own branded reception area. Mr. Morris, hello. I understand you've misplaced your phone and wallet? Steve, my head of security says as he shakes my hand and escorts me down the corridor to the corner suite, my home away from home. I was mugged, Steve. I misplaced nothing. A band of thugs jumped me and took my stuff. They even stuck me with a screwdriver a few times for good measure. Steve is one of us. A former U.S. Marine, he met the wrong side of a sniper's bullet in Afghanistan years ago and woke up in a military morgue stateside with his face still intact. Like most of them who wake up after their death, Steve turned to the internet to try to understand what had happened to him. One of his hits pinged on a website that we own, and we reached out, inviting him here for the same evaluation Messaih will be undergoing in the morning. Leave it with me, sir. You'll have your possessions back in the morning, Steve says, nodding and walking off back to reception. I let myself into the office, but don't bother with the lights. The floor-to-ceiling windows facing downtown Houston provide enough illumination so that I can find my way to my desk. I phone Nessie, after recounting the evening's endeavors to her and letting her know I won't be home tonight, that I've an early start with the Mexican. I say, so tomorrow's the day. Nervous? She half laughs down the phone at the mere suggestion of anxiety and then stops herself. He's not going to be happy, William. We've effectively ruined the life he's built for himself. There will be other lives, other names, other lovers, other versions of him he will mold himself into. What about you? Any apprehension in meeting my brother after all this time? Some, I tell her. Get some rest, and I'll see you in a couple of hours. I agree to her terms, and we bid each other good night. Heading across to a sofa to try and get some sleep, I look out into the night. They're all out there, the ones who haven't yet been found. I hope they're all safe. I hope they're happy even. We'll find you, and bring you home. Help you understand your immortality, and the abilities that encompass it. But most importantly, show that you are not alone. Sitting back on a cushion, I close my eyes. A dozen lifetimes flash before me, and I recall the first, reaching out for the jug of water and a glass which stand together on the coffee table in front of me. As I bring the lip of the glass up towards the jug, I open my eyes and watch as the water leaving it splashes down into the glass, a deep burgundy Merlot. It's not every night you are, for all intents and purposes, murdered. I think a little nightcap might be just what's called for. I'm waiting in the ground floor reception area at 8 the next morning, scrolling through my phone. Steve dropped off with me, together with my wallet, a little while ago. How he tracked these items down, and what he did to those in possession of them, was not mentioned. And I didn't ask. Senor? My softly spoken guest, Messaih, says behind me, and I turn and smile, shaking the man's hand and showing him to a seating area by the window. Messaih looks to be in his mid-40s, with a dark beard with wisps of gray at the chin and a bald head. His eyes, like so many of our kind, are intense. One look and you can feel that he has seen some things in his time. Did you find the place all right? I ask. This line of questioning is redundant when it was the Phoenix Committee's jet and limousine which flew him over from Mexico and then drove him from the airport to here. Yes, very nice plane. And one of the staff talked you through what was going to happen today? Tests, and I tell my story. Then I evaluated to become Phoenix member. I smile and nod. He's been briefed. Although I think if he knew what was coming, he'd back out and decide he didn't want the shiny Phoenix badge. As I mentioned before, we cannot die, but the pain is still very real. Excellent. Well, if you'd like to follow me, We'll head down to the lab where I'll introduce you to Neil, who will take charge of the physical examination. Matteo follows me to the elevators and we travel down to the basement. When the doors ping open, we step into a state-of-the-art medical bay with 10 booths, screening rooms off to the left, and Neil, our resident doctor, standing waiting for us, with a self-assured grin and fiery red hair tied back into a ponytail. "Matteo Aguirre?" he inquires, nodding to me as we approach. "Yes, sir. Si." He shakes the Mexican's hand before turning and leading us both towards a screening room. "Was it explained to you what will happen as part of the physical examination?" he asks over his shoulder as he opens the door and stands aside to let us enter. "I do physical and then I tell my story. Yes? You help me find a life." Niall smiles again. Something like that. The first part of the evaluation is essential so that we know we are dealing with someone like us. Secrecy in this day and age is key to living several long and happy lives. In order for us to determine if you are what you say you are, one of us, first we need to conduct a few experiments. "Por qué? Why?" Matteo asks, sitting down on the gurney in the middle of the room when Neil motions for him to do so. I step in here, placing a hand on Matteo's shoulder. "Because there have been whispers down the ages of men who do not age, and there are some out there who would like nothing but to bring this to light. A few years ago, a man came forward, claiming to be one of us. He said he died at the Battle of Waterloo, and had spent many years traveling the globe. In reality, he had been a freelance journalist hoping to land the motherlode of a story." What happened to him?" Matteo asks, looking up at me from his station. "I did this," Neil says, producing a scalpel and swiftly swiping the blade across Matteo's windpipe. I stand back, out of the way, and watch as Neil lies Matteo down onto the gurney, speaking softly to him, all the while putting weight on his shoulders so that he cannot move. The reporter bled out. He died for the story, which is just too big to be proved fact. Imagine if the world learned of men and women like us. It would change everything. Matteo continues gasping for the air, which is so close to his lips but can't reach his lungs. Blood oozes from his mouth and his eyes bulge as his body tries to breathe. Niall glances at the digital clock on the wall. 10 seconds has passed. We record the speed it takes subjects to recover. It is data, after all, and might one day help us in understanding more about ourselves. Matteo coughs and lunges upwards into a sitting position, taking in a gulp of air. As he coughs for a second time, Neil laughs and slaps his back. "There you go. See? That wasn't so bad, was it?" I smile too. The last thing we need is to be carting another body down to the morgue underneath us. Another life wasted in pursuit of the immortal man. "Are you okay?" I ask, as the Mexican leans forward, spitting a mouthful of blood onto the floor between his legs. When he looks up, he is grinning, his teeth stained red. "I passed the test, see?" Both Niall and I look at each other and laugh, chorusing, "See." The doctor, who was a feared Irish warrior in his first life, continues with the physical examination, checking Matteo's height, weight, blood pressure, etc. And I soon grow bored. I've heard the Mexican's story, and I'm only really hanging around to kill time before my meeting with William. As Niall straps Matteo down on the gurney and lights up the blowtorch to test his healing times to fire, I pat our guest on the shoulder and tell him I'll see him later to discuss any financial or identity help we might be able to offer. Matteo gives me a scared little nod, his eyes darting from the blowtorch to me and then back to the blowtorch. "Relax," I add. "What's the worst that can happen?" Winking at the terrified man and then nodding to Niall before walking out and heading back up to the office. I pour myself a drink, something strong, and pace around my desk, checking my cell phone every few minutes. William Johnson. That was his name until but a few days ago. When I first met him in Paris in 1760, he was going by the name of William Kerr. Through the years, he, like all of us, has had many names, although he favors keeping William and just swapping up the surname. He is Nessie's half-brother from her first life. She told me how he would tell her stories when she was a little girl, bouncing her up and down on his knee, playing hide-and-seek in the fields of heather which surrounded her home. She was still a little girl when he was put to death by the English, And afterwards, she missed him so, believed him dead. Like my own second coming, William survived his execution, and like the rest of us forever nomads, traveled the world looking for others. Sitting behind my desk, I reach into the top drawer and take out the book. William wrote this memoir under the pseudonym Mr. E in the 1950s, causing quite a stir amongst religious leaders of the time. The book was banned not long after. In it, he calls us divine, and perhaps we are, but not in the traditional sense. I check my watch. Nessie will be downstairs in the foyer waiting to receive him now. I do hope we can get past the methods we used to persuade him to travel all the way over here from the UK. No doubt he'll be pissed, but needs must be met, and I need his mind. I flick through Immortal, a memoir, and smile. His story is the same as all of ours, apart from one key difference. He has access to Eric Chesterfield, a man so powerful he could wipe out the entire world or heal it in an instant. And even Eric probably doesn't even realize it. One thing I am not is irrational. I do my due diligence, and I'm careful when I approach others like me. The reason for this is a knock at the door, and in enters Nessie, looking as beautiful as the day I met her many, many years ago. She flashes me a quick smile before moving to the side to reveal William. I jump up from my seat, clapping my hands. He's big, far more so than how I remember him in the 1700s. Here he is, the legendary William Wallace, the elusive Mr. E, and the brilliant William Johnson, I say, making my way across the room towards my guest and shaking his hand. He smiles, saying, "I should have known one day we would meet again." And I slap him on the back like we're old friends. "These days I go by the name Victor Morris, please," I urge, inviting him to sit on the very couch I slept on last night. As much as I'd like to engage in small talk, I know I need to get down to the reason I brought him here. As William sits on the edge of the couch, knees bent, looking like he's almost ready to pounce at any moment, I sit myself across the coffee table from him and smile. "But of course, dear William, you, or rather your pseudonym Mr. E, has become quite the celebrity in our circles for the past 65 years, and the notoriety of the book has helped join our brothers and sisters together and give them direction." "Direction?" he asks, frowning. "Make yourself comfortable, William. We have much to discuss." He nods. He is as comfortable as he'll allow himself to be, and says, "So I have created a cult. Fantastic. You know, when I wrote that book, I did so out of frustration. For centuries, I traveled the globe and searched for the divine, and it was only chance circumstance and following myths which led me to finding the both of you. And what did I have to show for it on both occasions? Nessie locked me in a box for 40 years, and you disappeared into the night. All this did was frustrate me even more, knowing that there were others out there like me, but none willing to help me, so that we could help our kind. Until you found Eric," Nessie says behind him, and he turns to face her. "Absolutely, until I found Eric," he growls, the warrior inside him rising to the surface. I clap my hands, the aggression, the savagery, exactly how I remember him. "William, calm down. You'll give yourself a heart attack." "Tried one once, but it didn't suit, so never bothered again," he says, turning back to me. "Such fire," I laugh. "I love it. I knew now was the right time to recruit you. Tell me, William, why are you here?" "To find more like us." "That is done. I can introduce you to 138 people like us. Now what? You have spent your life searching for us, and now that you have found enough of your divine to fill 2 bus coaches, what are your intentions? Say hello, shake their hands, and be on your way." His face softens into an expression of astonishment. In all his years, he has come across perhaps a handful of other immortals, and now I have just presented him with over 100. "Perhaps we should back up for a moment," I continue, allowing him to digest the numbers. "Nessie, would you mind bringing us some drinks, please, my dear?" She turns and leaves the office, and I lean forward across the coffee table towards William. Back when we met in the 1700s, I had just started up the Phoenix Committee, and like you was searching for others to join me. I created Count de Saint-Germain as the face of the Phoenix Committee, a cocky, aristocratic Lothario whose stories would span the centuries. This man, Saint-Germain, would pop up throughout the ages after searching for people like us and try to recruit them into the committee. That is why I was in Paris. To meet with you and recruit you. But you left. That night after our dinner, I went to find you to speak some more, and you had disappeared into the night. Why, if your intention was to recruit me? Now it is my turn to frown. That isn't how the narrative played out at all. William, what do you recall of our last meeting? The dinner. So you do not have any recollection of ambushing me in my bedchamber and dragging me across the town by my hair before breaking into a blacksmith's workshop and placing my head in a vice. The warrior shifts uncomfortably in his seat, his brow furrowing, fists clenching. He thinks this is a trick, but there is a reason he has no memory of our last altercation. Are you serious? What are you talking about? That night, William, you broke into my bedchambers, hit me hard enough to snap 2 vertebrae in my neck, and dragged me through the streets of Paris before breaking into a blacksmith's workshop and placing my head in a vice. He jumps up from the couch. I expected this. He thinks I'm ambushing him. Imagines he's walked into a trap, but all I'm doing is enlightening him. What is this? He shouts. Sit down, William. I have not brought you all the way over here for a fight. First, you need to accept that this happened and was the reason behind my leaving in 1760. As he slowly lowers himself back down, Nessie returns with a tray of drinks, startling him so that his whole body tenses up, ready for the attack, which is not coming. In seeing William's reaction to her entering, Nessie pauses and nods. So you told him? I smile and nod, moving in and pouring a cup of coffee for Nessie. Can I interest you in any refreshments, William? I ask, passing the cup and saucer across to her, and then pouring myself a cup. William reaches for a bottle of water. I take my time stirring in sugar and cream, considering how I might move the conversation past this moment. I can feel his eyes on me. He doesn't believe me. He believes this is a trap, and if I was in his position, I would too. Perhaps I should wreak revenge for my attempted murder, yes? The reason I am not is that I know it was not you, or rather, not your mind trying to end my life, just as it was not you who attempted to end your sister's life. William shakes his head. I don't understand any of this, Victor. You say I tried to kill you, but then you say, it was not my mind? Indeed. Have you ever come into contact with a jumper, William? Jumper? Yes. There are those of us who can jump into the minds of others. We call them jumpers. Do you recall the night you received Nessie's letter? Of course, I reply. You ended up at the bottom of a ravine, I am told, but yet you were unaware of how you got there. The girl. Eric said he saw a teenaged girl appear from nowhere and lie down on the wet grass close to where we were being attacked. She spoke to him when he told her to leave. Yes, that was Dolores, and she is a jumper. She can manifest a ghost-like image of herself close to her intended victim and then get inside their head. That image of herself she projected was not real. In fact, she lies in a hospital in Jamaica in a coma. She is a very special young lady who we have used from time to time when the need has occurred. In return, the Phoenix Committee pays all of her medical bills and continues to throw millions of dollars a year into medical research. So you think someone jumped into my mind and tried to kill you through me in 1760? He asks me. It seems a little far-fetched given there wouldn't have been that many of the divine discovered back then. There wasn't. You were to be my first recruit. Back then I knew very little of other abilities men and women like us might possess. And so when you tried to kill me, twisting that vice handle so that my skull cracked inside my head, I didn't, for 1 second, think it was anyone but you, attempting to end me. It was only when your sister told me of you trying to kill her that I thought outside of the box. I now know for certain who it was trying to kill the both of us, and I know why. But enough of that for now. Let's talk business. The reason we have recruited you. William takes a sip of his water and nods. Okay, what would be my role in this committee? Were I to accept your invitation, of course. Nessie moves forward, placing her cup down on the table and says, we would give you access to our research, introduce you to men and women like yourself, with great scientific minds who strive to understand how we are capable of our rapid regeneration and longevity. For the past century, I continue, you have always taught at universities. We can place you in any university in the world where you can continue to teach if that is what you desire. And what is it you want from me? I was quite happy with my post at Manchester University until you forced me to leave. I shake my head. You see, that is your problem, William. You need to stop obsessing over a single moment in time. You act like them, the mortals, and you should really start thinking more long-term. 30 years I spent. 30 years, 50 years, a century. It is immaterial. Our bodies do not age, the dying cells regenerate perfectly, while the mortal man's time on this earth is limited because their cells break down until they are no more. You know this. In fact, this is your theory. I walk the earth in the body of a 33-year-old. Nessie was 54 when she stopped aging. And William Wallace? 35 years old, he tells me. Why now? And don't tell me because it has taken this long to find me. In 1958, you were behind the abduction of my friend Eric, and the reason he was taken was to find me. That emblem you have on your front desk, of the phoenix in flight, Eric described, and then drew that very logo after he returned to England, having slaughtered all of your men. That logo was on every uniform of every guard he destroyed. I look up at Nessie and she turns away, shaking her head. Oh, you doubt my words? He continues. Then perhaps we might resume this conversation after I have invited Eric to join us. He stops, gauging both of our reaction to his threat, and then laughs. You fear him, don't you? You fear him because of who he once was and what he can become if roused. No, you don't understand, William, Nessie says. 1958 wasn't us. Really? He shouts, standing back up from his place. Yes, William, I say. Really. Young man, I have been around since before the assassination of Caligula. I fought gladiators at the Colosseum in Rome, fought with another William who would defeat Harold II at Senlac Hill, Hastings. I do not want to fight you. The publication of your book brought our kind together, but it also unearthed a threat to our kind. An invisible group of hunters emerged, scouring the earth and capturing your divine, experimenting on us, and then slaying us. Eric was lucky in 1958. The team employed to abduct him did not understand our power, but their employers do. They have been slaying us for centuries. Originally believed to be a religious sect, tasked with protecting the word of their Christian Lord from the non-believers, they evolved into something more. An army of religious nuts hell-bent on seeing us demons sent straight back to hell. That is fucking crazy. So we have this sect of the Christian church running around abducting innocent people because they believe we are demons? Nessie nods. They believe we mock their Lord because as he rose from the dead, and so too do we, impervious to harm once we are reborn. Well, I am an atheist, dear sister. In my time I have studied most religions, tried believing in a few too, but reason always won to any faith. We're not talking about you and what you believe, Nessie continues. We are talking about a dangerous and highly motivated army of men and women across the globe, sleeper cells who go about their daily lives, but are trained when the need arises to track, abduct, and slay us. Eric isn't the only one to have escaped their grasp. During the Second World War, Wine 2 was captured, I add. Their scientists were torturous, picking at my body for months, trying to understand how it is I could heal from the cuts, from their scalpels, and my broken bones would fix. They test us to find our weaknesses, and as yet, I have not met a single one of our kind to survive a beheading. Sounds like you guys have got your hands full, but this still does not answer where I fit in. If what you tell me is correct, and there is a group of crazed religious nuts running around killing our kind because we mock Christ, then why would I want anything to do with you? Because, I say, we are planning to fight back, and when our armies rise, we need warriors like you once were. What the Phoenix Committee requires from you is for you to prove your theories. We have men and women willing to be your test subjects. They will be paid handsomely by us. But ultimately, any lab you set up to work out of will be your own. Next week, The Immortal. A memoir is going to be republished and released to the public again. The book's notoriety will land it at the top of the charts, and we will reach out to more of our kind than ever before possible. With the book's release, we also require an expert on the book to teach classes. Ah, Now I get it. The penny has finally dropped. You will offer me all of your resources, set me up in a lab, and give me access to as many of our kind that I require, and in return, I will set up a recruiting station for others like us to join your army and fight the men who are hunting and killing us? I nod. That's the deal. You may choose anywhere in the world to set up your lab, and with it a post at the local university will open where you can set up your recruitment desk, so to speak. The once warrior finishes his water in one gulp and leans over the table to shake my hand. He then turns to Nessie and nods to the door. She nods back, and I stand and watch as they head towards the exit. Before he reaches the door, though, he stops, turning and saying, "Just one thing, Victor, before I leave to consider your proposal. How are you able to republish The Immortal? My publishers in London hold the rights to that work, and I doubt they would have sold without notifying me." You're absolutely right, they wouldn't. And so I bought the publishers yesterday afternoon and had one of my men stationed in London, a very prominent MP you will have heard of, draft a proposal for the ban on your book to be lifted. He took it straight to the Prime Minister, who signed it off immediately. You see, William, when you have sat at the table of kings and been an advisor to emperors, convincing a modern-day failing politician anything requires just one thing: a fat enough wallet. William smiles at this and nods. Good to see you. I hope we don't leave it as long next time, I tell him as he follows Nessie out of the office. As the door shuts, I drop back down onto the couch and take a breath. He doesn't believe us, I could tell. The flippancy in his voice as he recounted our struggles. These hunters of our kind are very real, and the greatest irony of all, other than them fighting their fight in the name of the Messiah, and on the other side of the battleground, stands the very person who they fight for. Other than that, their armies are led by one of us, a man I once called a friend, but who his disciples simply call the Templar. The beginning. Check out Guardian, Book 1 in the Divine Chronicles.